today we're going to be talking about role versus relationship. This is something that came up in one of my lives from last week where we were talking about emotions, and someone asked me to elaborate a little bit more on this idea because it was new for them. And so maybe this idea is new for you as well. So, what do I mean by role versus relationship? Well, in life, in parenting, you have a role as your child's parent, right? You have responsibilities to keep them clothed and fed and put them to bed and make sure they have a routine and some structure, and you're responsible for their schooling, their education, their activities, their play dates, all the things, right? That's all part of your role as their parent. At the same time, you also have a relationship with this person, right? Like, this is a human being that lives in your family and is part of your everyday, your social interaction. And so you have a relationship with this person. And when they're tiny, the relationship part can kind of get obscured because we're so wrapped up in all of the day-to-day details of the role part. But the truth is, as we've talked about, you are raising a human being, not a baby, not a toddler, but a person who someday is going to be an adult. And I don't know about you, but for me, in the long run, I want to have a relationship with my children. I want them to call me up and invite me out to lunch when they're 25 years old. And so I want to be parenting in a way right now that nurtures and develops the kind of relationship that I want to be having with them now and in the future. And so these things can get kind of entangled, right? Because if we have conflict, if our child is being disobedient or having a hard time or refusing to go to bed or whatever it is, our relationship can sometimes be compromised in that moment. But my whole goal in teaching parenting and in working with all of you is to help you to preserve and nurture that relationship even in those moments of conflict, and to keep that relationship front of mind as you learn to navigate those difficult times with your child. And this can be done, right? Like, this can be done. And this is kind of a new concept. It's something I call new paradigm parenting because it's not necessarily how we were raised. It's not necessarily something that we're used to. It's new information about the brain, all of this stuff that helps us to be able to do things differently now. So I want you to think about it like this. Like, if you have a job, or if you've ever had a job, you have a role within your company or your organization, right? So maybe you work in finance, or maybe for me, I was a clinical director of an agency for a long time. So in your role, in your job, you have certain things that you're responsible for, right? You probably have a job description. You probably have tasks that are your responsibility and other things that are not your responsibility. And it's pretty clear, right? It's usually, hopefully, pretty clear what is yours and what's your responsibility. And so you have your role within your organization, and then you have other people in your organization or your company that you interact with, and you have a relationship with them, right? And your relationship is probably mostly dictated by your role in that setting. But I don't know about you, a lot of us have friendships within our organizations, or we make friends at work, right? And so for me, for example, when I was a clinical director, I actually hired one of my friends to work for our organization. It wasn't my decision to hire her, but someone in my company, in my organization, my boss actually, recommended that we interview this person who happened to be a close friend of mine, and we ended up hiring her. And so suddenly I have someone that I have a relationship with that I also now have a role with because I was part of her supervision team. And so it was important for me to integrate these things and also keep good boundaries. So we have integration when we have good boundaries, in the sense that we know this thing is separate from this thing, and then we can bring the two things together. And so I bring that analogy in hopes of getting you thinking a little bit about, how your role as a parent is a little bit separate from your relationship with your child, and that the things that we do to nurture our child's emotional world and to talk about feelings and emotional intelligence and to focus on connection, like, those are the things that really matter for the relationship in the long run. And the nuance and the trick is to execute your role as a parent while nurturing that relationship at the same time. And so, this kind of looks like, I see you, I see that you're struggling, I see that you're having a hard time, and you still need to pick up your toys, or I can see that you're really disappointed that we can't go on a play date today. I know it's really hard when mom says no, right? So I often say, holding, like one of the hardest things about parenting is both being the person who has to set the boundary and also the person who empathizes with your child about the fact that you just set a boundary, if that makes sense, right? So, you might deliver some disappointing news. No, we can't go to the park right now, or, no, you can't, go out and play in the backyard, or whatever it is. You have to say no sometimes. And then your child's going to have feelings about that. And it's your job in your relationship with them to offer kindness and empathy and compassion. And it's a real kind of push-pull. It's a real tug, and it really kind of causes some inner tension sometimes as a person, as a parent, because we're doing these two things that are kind of in conflict with one another. We have to maintain good boundaries. We have to be the one to set limits. And then our child's going to have some feelings about that. Most of the time, especially when your children are very little, if you set a boundary, they're going to have feelings about it. And so the real trick is to not be super harsh or, overly stern. There's no need for that. It's just a facet of healthy relationships that we have boundaries, and that we maintain those boundaries with love and kindness. So integrating the role and the relationship is the trick of new paradigm parenting. It's the trick of parenting in a conscious and connected way. So I hope this helps to illuminate for you what that dichotomy is, or that integration, dichotomy and then integration of the role versus the relationship. I hope this is helpful. I love this topic and would love to talk with you more about it. So if you have further questions, please drop them under this video. See you soon.